I think that probably the biggest change, if you look at it at the largest level that we're seeing right now, is that for the first time in history, we have 3 billion people who are connected to each other. Mm-hmm. We have never, ever had that before. And most of these people, most of the time, are free to connect with anyone. Now, there are limitations in countries, there are limitations by technology, but for the most part, people can do that. We are going through a communication shift, and we've only had a few of them in the history of humanity. So the first communication shift that we had was when we went from oral society to a literate society. So we went from the spoken word to the written word. And that was 2000, however, depending on what civilization that was. And there's an interesting shifts that happened with each one, is that when we went from oral to written, we went from polytheistic to monotheistic. We went to religions of the book, and we also got kingdoms that were able to consolidate power because the king's word could be written and put out. Then, though that period continued for quite a while, then the next one was when we shifted from the written word to the printed word. And when that happened in Europe, first of all, is that sparked the Protestant Reformation. People were questioning the church, and one of the reasons they were questioning the church was because before the Bible was printed, people were able to only got the word of God from the priest. And then once the Bible was printed, they read through the Bible and they realized the priests weren't telling them all the stories. And so they started questioning the power of the priests. And then you start getting Martin Luther and the others. And then in Europe, you get about 100 years of religious wars. The princes are fighting. And it's all about because the communications enables new technologies, new ways of people communicating with each other, and society shifts. Well, we've started another shift like that, where we've gone from the printed medium to the electric medium, which actually started with the telegraph. Right? And we're about 150, 160 years into that right now. Started with the telegraph, then the radio, then the television, and about halfway through that, the World Wide Web. And that we are and in each one of these previous shifts is that it took about 150 years to sort of see the impact on humanity. And each one took about 300 years. And the reason that this shift takes 300 years is because 300 years is the period by which nobody remembers anybody who remembers the old ways, like your grandmother, what your grandmother remembers, right? And 300 years later, we get the new norm. So here we are at this period in time where we're having the fourth major communication shift in humanity. Each previous one has made huge differences. We got the scientific revolution, we got the Protestant Revolution, we got the industrial era and things like that. So the macro is this shift in communications, and we are more than halfway through that right now. And with each previous one, speed of change increases at about the halfway point. So the halfway point for us was 1995, which was Mosaic, the browser, the web, and everything. And now we're just into that, and that's why people are now seeing it. We're seeing things like Uber, we're seeing Airbnb, we're seeing interesting political movements. What they call the indignados, is that right? Okay, so these were things that are enabled by this new type of technology. Just like in the Protestant Reformation, is that Martin Luther was able to use the printed word to get his message out, and then people agreed with it, and then some didn't, and we've got those kinds of clashes. So that's the macro level that we're all living in right now, this big communications change. At the same time, we're going through a few other shifts. So we're moving from this industrial market economy to a network digital economy. And that means that the cost of any knowledge artifact goes down. Right? The cost to print a book is so much money, but the cost for extra electrons is close to zero. So you're getting marginal costs are getting close to zero. So you can build something once and you can sell it many times. And that is shifting the way in which our businesses have been structured, the way in which markets exist, right? And so we're looking at, in terms of shifts in value as well, is that if you take a look at stock indexes, like a big American stock index is Standard & Poor. There's the New York Stock Exchange, but Standard & Poor measures 500 companies and has been doing that over the years. In the 1970s, the Standard & Poor index was about 80% tangible value and 20% intangible. Last year, it was the reverse. 80% intangible, 20% tangible. But what does that mean? Intangible value, how do we measure that? How do we control it? It's less stable, it's very volatile. So we're now in an era in which the value that we have in the marketplace is much more intangible, much more volatile. And that the knowledge that we need to be able to deal with that is more implicit knowledge rather than explicit. In other words, there's no code, there's no procedure, there are no rules. It's more know-how, savoir-faire, and socially constructed types of understanding that we have. So that is putting pressure on educational institutions. We're seeing that already, is that people are graduating from a university. Are they ready for this new economy, this new world, or things like that? And some people are saying no. They may be saying no for the wrong reasons, but enough people are questioning it for us to say that we are going through a shift. And a lot of new models are coming out. People are now, just like the Protestant Reformation, is that when the people started questioning the Catholic Church, there were a whole bunch of different Protestant religions that were created. Some of them didn't last. We had Quakers and Shakers and the Anabaptists and Baptists and things, and some lasted and some didn't, because people were testing out new models to see what would work. And we're doing similar types of things. Now we're starting to see an explosion of new models in the way that we structure work and the way that we organize. The Occupy Wall Street was part of that, was one way of a new model. The Arab Spring was another one. And so we're seeing these kinds of things happening all over the place. So for organizations, it's not just cliche that, about change and everything, that we are actually going through a significant period of the way in which we organize and the way in which we work, and what kind of learning we need to be able to do that new type of work. The other thing that's coming up on top of all of this is automation, is that because of these digital networks, because of computers, is that we are able to automate anything that we can create a procedure for. So we create a flow chart for what a mortgage officer at a bank does. That person can be replaced by a computer algorithm. And we're seeing that happening more and more. So it's not just low-end work that is getting replaced, but we're seeing lawyers being replaced. We're seeing a lot of different types of high-tech, what we thought were high-tech, even programming. We have computers now that are able to play the game of Go and beat the world Go champion. Right? This was 10 years ago. People thought that was 50 years out, and computers have been able to do that. So what remains for human work? Right? What remains is the stuff that computers can't do. Unfortunately, a lot of the ways that we organize work around jobs, where we can replace one person with another, or school, where we have a curriculum, the same curriculum for every student, well, that's the kind of thing, anything that we can sort of put and categorize is something that a machine or an algorithm or a robot can do. What's left for humans then is the complex, the fuzzy, the artistic, the creative kind of work. And there becomes a challenge. And that's what we're seeing. The people who are successful, the organizations that are successful, are the ones that are playing in that area a little bit more, where they're coming up with something new. And you see that in the arts, you see that in cinema. And we're starting to see that more with businesses. You're seeing it with companies like Etsy, in which it's one-of-a-kind artistic work that people are more interested in.
You're too comfortable to know.